The Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now, and you will get a match deposit of up to $100. We're talking through the DraftKings picks for the Zurich Classic of Nolens. Also the bets, maybe some weather chat, and it's a unique week because it's a team format on DraftKings, and we only get so many of these a year. And frankly, I'm going to include myself into this bucket that I just don't really know how to play them all that well. We figured out match play, and then they got rid of match play. So that was no fun. And whenever there's one of these weeks, most of the content industry for golf has either taken a vacation week, they're doing less content. God knows that I have been doing less content this week. I did the bet show with Jeff. We're doing this show, but I had an NFL mock draft that came out. I talked some strategy a little bit later too. Friday, I will be coming. It's not going to be live, but we're going to record super early on Friday morning. Me, Cust, and Jeff as a reaction to the first round of the NFL draft. Mainly Chargers, Jets, and other random things that happen and talk. But it's on too late here to do it live. And I don't want to compete live with a whole bunch of other shows. I'd rather let them stew on their takes for a little bit. Come with some fire, and we'll have that out as early as possible on Friday morning. So please go support that. Smash the like to the episode while you're here, sub to Mayo Media Network, and subscribe to the newsletter. I'm not done making bets for the week yet, so the final bets will be in there. Maybe I am done making bets for the week. I don't know. Unless Sky convinces me to fire off on someone else here. All the guys that I wanted to bet on at good odds now all have terrible odds, and none of the guys at the higher odds moved whatsoever. It's just like the market collapsed on itself in a really weird way. Skylar Hoke is joining us from the show. You may know him, obviously, from the Mayo Media Network on the DP World Tour Picks and Bet Show every Monday night when there's an event with Tom Jacobs, but he's also over at EstablishTheRun.com, ETR right now, and I can think of no better site, Sky, for you to be involved with for what you do the best in DFS golf. So congratulations.
No, that means a lot, Pat. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And it has been a welcome there. It's been, my first time really going back into committed content, around the clock. You've been so, nice with Tom and I for years, giving us the opportunity to bring that and spread the good word about the DP World Tour, which has been a really good year so far. Have loved it over there too. But yeah, with ETR just being kind of a glue guy, filling in where the projections and context kind of needed a little bit of bolstering up to kind of spread that good word on guys telling stories across the world that get their opportunities on the PGA Tour. So really like doing that so far. And especially when we get to these type of weeks, because it's definitely not your standard plug and play, optimize, sim, it's a new week.
So do you find that whether it works out or not, do you find that you have more of an advantage in a week like this than you would over a standard week? Because not only is it a new format that people have to figure out on the fly, especially even when it comes to something like using the data. Like there's no data on this event basically whatsoever. So it's a lot of guesswork of how guys are doing and why they're successful in these types of formats. Additionally, fewer people seem like they're paying attention or playing. So if someone says, hey, this is a good play, they're going to get overweighted in the market massively as opposed to a regular week when so many people are doing work.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely, it's going to take some time. I don't think those fruitions have come into like a GPP takedown at a match play type of style or the Zurich, but I think putting, the dice in the right play, basically, yes. I think these are the weeks overall, and the data has, that's been something Thursday morning, right at 7:15 a.m. every week. You can find those tweets out there. I was able to do some study this year on kind of the past 3 years of how to approach the Zurich. And I was actually a little bit surprised at the results compared to the way I probably have played it in the past. I think it, on the surface level, of course, is an event that's going to have more chaos than the typical type of week. And it's also an event that, what's the best? It's as much as we can data drive it and try to figure out who's going to tee off on what hole in this. I don't think the players care or get that deep into the weeds on it. Like, I don't think they are saying from a data standpoint, Bob McIntyre needs to tee off on hole 11 versus Thomas Dietrich. And like, they just show up. I think a lot of times they're just showing up and hope they play well, where we probably get that wrong sometimes in the data too. So I think I've learned that you don't need to be as unique as I probably approached it in the past, leaving thousands on the table, picking the randoms at the bottom end. I do think a lot of these teams are just more dead than I anticipated sometimes. And you might need to find that one or two, 6K team that gets you there. But more often than not, these top end teams have played quite well in this event.
So essentially, you have to figure out who to fade from that top end and kind of coalesce around the one or two teams that you really do think are going to do well.
So what I've seen, we've, through the years, there's been, they repriced it. 2021 was the first year. They had 9 teams over 10K that year, and it kind of threw things off. So this year is way more typical of 2022 and 2023, where there's been 8 teams that have priced over 10K. 7 of those 8 teams have made the weekend. There's been 22 teams out of 8,500 to 10K. And it was 19 of those 22 teams have made the weekend. Last year, Homa and Morikawa was the only team above 8,500 that missed the cut. And it's only a 33 team cut, right? It's a smaller field with still a substantial cut. So with that many teams playing well and basically ultimately meaning less lower teams make the weekend, 6 of 6% have been really, really low every single year. Single digits is probably going to repeat without a doubt. And so, yes, if you can find, I would probably say if you can make a stand on a chalk team that you don't think is going to do well and kind of live maybe on those mid-range teams that are coming in, not as the standout plays, but maybe in the low teens or high single digits, like that's the best way to get unique versus like try to think that Russ Cochran is going to carry Eric Cole to like a T9 finish this week. Like that's not happening,
I went to go see who Dylan Wu was playing with just to see if he can ride off the fumes of arguing with Jeff. But apparently he's playing with Jack Nicklaus, which probably isn't going to work out well for him.
He's somebody that he has a DP World Tour card, so you can't, fight too much with the old Nicklaus there. But yeah, man, there's just teams that they can't. I just don't think without a doubt, like there's been one, I think it was like one 6K team that came in like under 10% in the last like 3 years that like performed to a degree. Like you're going to need to find those. And I don't think teams end up getting super concentrated. Like we'll talk about the cooties without, and I was worried. I always write up like the low end plays that I like. I was worried the cooties might get steamed because we like to talk about them. Right. But I still think based off roster construction, they're not going to get out of control. And I'd feel confident that you can find that 6K team at a reasonable ownership. Just don't go wild with like 3 above 9,500 and 3 below, because it's just impossible to get everybody through the cut.
All right, so let me run through the bets that I've made so far for the week. Nothing has really changed, honestly, since Monday when I was getting the bets in the first place. I really regret not betting Hadwin and Nick Taylor at the moment because they were 40-1 when I first looked, and I think they're down to like 20-1 or something crazy right now. But I have the cooties. I have them both at 200-1 and 150-1 with the 5 placements. I played everyone with the placements, just try to get them up there. So I have them. I have Smalley and Schmidt at 90-1 with the top 5, and Moore and Neesmith with the top 5. Like, who are you looking at from the back end, or maybe even as one of the favorite teams? Because the first team that did initially leap off to me is I thought that Morikawa and Kitayama would be a really good team together.
I like them a lot. I thought those early 16s were very nice. I think it's kind of settled in the 12s, which I still don't mind if that's the one team you feel confident. Of the top, I think their skills, I mean, Kitayama's been ball striking like vintage Morikawa, like they've been playing to that angle. He just can't make a putt. So if Colin can keep the putting rolling, I would agree there. I mean, there's a substantial gap from those top 4 teams, I think, to the other ones. The market, shows that. I didn't mind really, like, I was pretty impressed the way, McNeely showed up at some of the bigger events. I know that the fear is on the holes of, Hoagie having to chip around the green. Like, I'm wondering though, like on those type of teams, like, can you just pray for par? You know what I mean? Like Hoagie puts them to like 12 feet and McNeely's got to save it for a par save. And then you birdie the other holes when Tom, avoids a 9 like he did to close out Heritage and screw a lot of people over, like if that's in play. So I didn't mind the Hoagie McNeely team. The one that I've been there's I guess kind of 3 that I think that I'm on at long odds. I love Rico Hoey's game right now.
Oh,
Rico
okay,
Hoey's been
sold.
smashing
You don't
the
need to
ball,
sell me
right?
anymore.
I mean, last week.
I'm so in on him.
Yeah. And I mean, Justin Suh has been, can you give any insight to what he was practicing on at TP Summerlin? Was he on the greens at all, or was he just trying to figure out these irons? Because it's been bad from ball striking for him.
Oh, he was just sitting on the greens, just making every single putt.
Scott
Piercy was there too, missing every single putt. Like, Justin, man, like, we know you can putt. Like, that's fine.
Yep.
Like, go out and hit a few wedges, please.
Yep. So I love that team though. Hoey had 3 eagles last week, still finished T33. He's basically been after 54 holes, like in a spot to cash in each way in like 4 of the last 5 events for him. So I think that team is someone I like a lot. The other one, I sneakily think like one of the more under the radar years I didn't anticipate on the PGA Tour, and it finally came to fruition last week with a top 20. But I think Jorge Campillo could like fit this type of course pretty well. I mean, he picks up wins on the DP World Tour. He is a really good short gamer, similar to that Hoey Suh team. I mean, not in the games, but like Suh had such a good year. Norman was so good in 2023. Neither of them have done anything so far this year. Norman played really good at the Zurich last year, and that kind of kicked him off. So like those are probably 2. I like the Cooties. But I think like those are 2 for sure bets for me at this stage.
Yeah, for me with the Cooties, like, it just made a lot of sense. Like, why are we? I get that Matt Fitzpatrick is on the team, but Alex Fitzpatrick's like, he's okay. Like, he's what Rico Hoey is to the PGA Tour, but on the DP World Tour.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and they're priced like crazy. Yes.
Yeah. Because he has Matt with him. I completely understand that. Like, I don't understand why they were initially priced above the Højgaards. Like, the Cooties are basically discount Højgaards. But when I went and did, like, when I started running through some of the stats and everything like that, like, I was going to bet them regardless of if I could make a statistical case for them or not, just because I think it's funny. And listen, probably no one besides the Højgaards in this field has played more golf with and against each other. I mean, they're twins. The Højgaards are twins. Like, how often do you think the Fitzpatricks have actually played team golf together?
Yeah, I mean, the age separation. And like, I guess I don't know with Rasmus and Nikolai, like Cootie's grandparents like played on the PGA Tour. You know, like those kids have been playing golf since they could walk. I definitely love that. And I'm hoping what you're saying is statistical. I think they line up really well with each other.
Well, this is the big question that I have for you. And I guess this is the big question that everyone needs to try to answer for themselves this week is, what do you actually want in a team? Do you want 2 guys whose games completely mirror each other so they can super take advantage of everything in best ball, being in the same spots? It was always, who the hell did Rahm play with the very first
Ryan
time?
Palmer.
No, before that. I think he played with Wes Bryant.
Let's see. Yeah, that makes, yes. Wesley Bryan. Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, well, that team doesn't make any sense because now it'll be great for Bryant when he's hitting approach shots and alt shot because he's going to be hitting like wedges from like wherever. But Rahm is just going to be discombobulated trying to hit from 18 miles back where he's just not so used to hitting. And listen, if they had won, we'd be making the reverse case for it. Like, it's a one sample to go with opposing skill sets here. But with both the Cooties, Pearson mashes it off the tee and actually makes a ton of putts. Whereas Parker is really good with his irons and really good around the greens and not so great on the greens or off the tee. And accuracy, unless you hit it into the water, seems to mean absolutely nothing at TPC Louisiana.
Yeah, I think it's more of like a PGA National, right? Where like just make sure you're out of the danger spots. Yes, but so I think it differs from where you're betting on the board. I mean at the end or like far down there, you're not, even if they are comparable, like similar type of games, they're just 2 probably not great players, right? So I think at that stage, like I prefer the altering. Like I'm super interested in Aldridge Potgieter and Thriston Lawrence because Potgieter hits it a mile and Thriston is better the rest of the way in, right? So like the 9 holes you worry about is Thriston teeing it off, and then how is Aldridge going to be able to get an iron close to the green type of thing. But I think that skill set for me, alternating is kind of the way I look at it. Or people, I don't know, that maybe have just shown some recent pops. I mean, I do think there is a lot of guesswork, right? Like, but potentially near the top, I would rather have them play the same game because they're so good. And like Akitayama Morikawa fits that mold. Like Zalatoris Theegala is so opposite of that even though combining them is like a best player in the world type of thing. I don't know if that plays out the best in a pairing format.
With the way that you described how to construct teams, we'll construct some teams here in a minute that it almost has to be not necessarily a balanced build, but it's not going to be like I like to build the four good players, two crappy players. Like that, the 4-2 doesn't seem to be the build here, or the 5-1. It's going to be like 1 10K, 1 9K, 1 8K, 3 7Ks. That seems to be what the strategy has bared out, right?
Yeah, and it worries me because I don't love that because it ends up being like super duped. But then I looked at the last 5 years or last 3 years of the top five lineups. Not a single lineup was duped. Every single lineup spent at least $49,400. Cumulative ownership just didn't go above 100%. So you can't just jam like can't lay X and then probably go right to, I like mid and Smalley, but I think they're going to be super popular. I mean, your bets are truthfully probably the ones that end up getting steamed a little bit just because they make sense when you look at it. Like, why was Taylor Moore where he is based off how he's playing? Like, I don't think we can land those three, but these guys still stayed unique even with an 80-person team. So I'm pretty confident we can run that approach and get different in one or two spots and just not like have to live like down the 6Ks for two or three guys for sure.
So before we get to building some DraftKings teams, on Live, I bet Louis, Reed, and Charles. I put Charles up with the top 5 each way. And then I tailed Tom on some guy. He was like, yeah, I'm betting him 400 to 1 or something. So I was like, all right, I'm in. Takahiro Hataji.
For the one he's on, or is that one?
Yeah, for the ISPS Honda Championship.
Tom and I have the most crossover I think we've ever had overall on the year. We each have 4 of the same 6 golfers for us. So like we are, but what sucks is like the DP World Tour has taken off, a month, and then they only play for 2 weeks, and then it's 3 more weeks, and now we combine it with the Japanese golf tour. Need like somebody at 750 that's got some really good course form overall. They play this course on the Japanese golf tour the last 10 years basically. The one that I like that's going to be the names in which you might recognize, Shugo is back in our life, Shugo Imahara. So I really like him. He won on this course last year on the Japanese golf tour. He's showing life. He would be the one of the Japanese golf tour guys. And then I have a long shot that was 300s, Yuta Suguruya. He was in the mix or won they play that big event, that Dunlap Phoenix, where they bring over like
Brooks plays
in there. Brooks was in there. Yes. All those guys were in there. He won that event at 22 years old, 300 to 1 for him in this event. Like, it's a lot of guesswork, but, yeah, we have some bombs on our card. We don't start until the 70s, and it has been a good year overall. So hopefully we keep it rolling.
What was that name again?
Last name is Sugura, so Suguira. Yuta is the first name.
Okay, Yuta Segura. 100.
Yes.
He's 125 to 1 now.
I think some of the like European tipsters were on, like Coley's on him too, I believe. But
right,
he opened like 300, 400s on Monday.
Yeah, so we'll get Yuta, Papa Shugo, and
Tom's long shot, yeah.
Hajati.
Takahiro
Hajati.
Tom never ventures that deep into the board, so I was proud of him.
Yeah, so we'll go with those guys. That'll be fun to wake up to and have them all be dead. There was someone we bet on. I forget who I tailed you guys on at the Indian Open. It was someone who was a super bomb, and he had a terrible day one. But I think he was the best player in the field after that. He ended up coming like 9th or something.
Yeah, there was one of our long shots finished, gosh, in each way. Veer Alawat, like he did really good Indian Open. I think he was like 300s or so. There's been a few places. We almost had the infamous Robin Williams win on the DP World Tour. He lost in a playoff from the dead, so we've had, these events, I feel really bad. Like, I've never put myself as much in the shoes as the golfers are. Like, these guys that battle through Q school to get spots, like, they're not even getting starts half the time over there. Like, they're having to take 3 months off at a time, and it's just no progression at all. So it's thankfully been a good year, but like, it's just start and stop is getting frustrating for them.
I can most definitely see that. Let's jump over to DraftKings right now. and try to build some lineups out. So where do you think that we should start with all of this? Because I do think that regardless of what happens, like Cantlay and X are going to be the team that everyone goes to, right?
Yes, 100%. 100%. And rightfully so. I think this week from like it's more of an MME week for me versus like taking big stands. Like I think it's difficult to do if you have them against the market. I would recommend you do it. But yeah, I can't imagine being low on the field to Cantlay and X. Last year, they came in
fourth, I think.
They came in fourth, but ownership-wise, they were 50% as a team last year at 11,100. So that's the only fear is that feels very, very owned. And I guess they were playing better last year compared to this point, right? But Cantlay was there last week.
Yeah, and it's not like Xander's been playing poorly either.
No. So, I mean, they're going to get the most clicks without a doubt. Maybe I'd set the ET or the over under at like 40 for him.
All right, so let's see if we can build the chalkiest lineup possible. So we'll go with Cantlay and Xander to start. Who do you think like the down below team is going to be this week?
Okay, so I would think. I think it has to be Smalley Schmid.
I'll effort this on Fantasy National. I got to star some guys first. And you can still generate all your lineups on Fantasy National. Oh, by the way, you've been using the app, right?
Yeah, the app's amazing. I told you pre-show, like it's the best way to sweat because you can see, I mean, the point you made of not having to refresh, it just constantly does it. Personally, I don't want to say I'm a pessimist with my golfers, but it's nice to know when they're sitting over an 8-foot putt that it's still a coin flip, even though we think they're going to make it every single time. So I love the ability of knowing what they're going to score. You know, what's the likelihood they're going to get up and down from here, be able to toggle. I think the ability to group by like showdown or like main slate lineups, like you can customize a lot on there. So it's a huge ad. I love it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you like it. It's available now to all Fantasy National members for iOS and Android right now, fantasynational.com/Mayo, in order to get that 20% off. And, you know, since Sky recommends it, I would suggest that you go do it. So here's what we're looking at for ownership, just on Fantasy National right now. How many people, like, only 800 people have generated lineups so far. Like, just people don't care about this week whatsoever.
No, but the contest, like I'm shocked once again, you know, 150K to first, like they're delivering big contests again. So I wonder if they're going to overlay, but I'll take it if so.
So the top teams that have been generated so far, and again, this is a pretty small sample, so it's tough to say. Cantlay's, and it only gives you one of the names for the ownership, so it just doesn't sit out there to confuse you. But it's Cantlay X, Hoagie's team, Taylor Moore, Davis Thompson, weirdly enough, and then Dylon Wu at 74.
Okay. I don't mind that Davis Thompson team, actually. They're kind of that skill set, right? That alternates the day. They're kind of priced into a weird range at 8,100, like versus like a Neesmith Moore. I mean, I think the three first clicks have to be Cantlay, Neesmith Moore, Smalley Schmid, like as the three, and then you're left with just under 8K, you know, for the final three. Like I think those are the three most popular teams as of now.
All right, so that's what I have in right now. So yeah, you have 79.66 left per team. Do you think we should go to Billy Horschel? Coming off a win. Tyson Alexander has not been playing poorly at all. Like, he's not good, but he's not bad at the same time. Like, Billy won this as a part of a team. He's won this as a single in 2014. Like, obviously, he likes this course, and now he's in great form.
Yeah, that's just a lot for Tyson Alexander, right? Like, he's got to be the worst player in the 8Ks, do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Daniel Berger is in the 8Ks right now.
Shots fired. Daniel Berger, jeez.
But I guess he's done nothing since he came back.
So the two teams in the sixes that are showing ownership right now are the Cooties.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Stanger's team. Who is he playing? He's playing with someone like R8, isn't he?
Yeah, he's playing with Dumont Dechessart. Like, I think that would be the one in the 6Ks that outside of the Cootie Bros that I would worry about. But I don't even know if you need to like click there. That's the.
Yeah, so let's try to cap it at the bottom then. So the Smalley, let's say Smalley Schmidt is the worst team that we go with at $7,200. If we're trying to fill this out chalk-wise, like I said, this Carson Young team seems to be getting a little bit of love, it looks like. But like these numbers could be way off at the same time, too, because we're recording this earlier than normal. And I think people are just clicking buttons.
Yeah, I would click. I could see that Novak Thompson team looking around the teams around them. Like Novak's had a great year. Thompson's been popping. I like the Chan Kim, Doug Gim team. Like I could maybe see that being clicked a little bit.
Were you surprised that the Wallace Thorbjorn team got no love?
Yeah, they're kind of slept under, right? Like quality. I mean, what has Wallace really been? I thought Thorbjorn was decent at the Masters. Has Wallace really done much lately?
Yeah, Thorbjorn was decent at the Masters for like 2 rounds, and then he went away.
Yeah.
He had a terrible day 3. Yeah, yes, like Wallace was 17th at Valspar. He's been terrible off the tee, but like he generally shows up in like crappy events. That'd be my one take on him.
He does.
But even Joe Highsmith and Andrew Putnam.
I like those guys. I think those guys are. I've been betting Highsmith, or at least tracking him quite a bit. Like he missed the cut last week. I think if the wind's up, like Highsmith is a player that plays the best in tough conditions overall.
Okay, that's interesting. Not what I would have thought from him. But yeah, it actually kind of shows that. If it's really easy or really hard, he's good. If it's just like normal, he's kind of terrible.
Yeah, because he did really well at the Farmers, right? Like early on in the year. A lefty too. But I guess if I'm picking the next team in, like I think I would go Novak Thompson.
All right, so Novak. But now we're really missing out on these like 9K guys, right?
But I think that's where the difference is this week. I'm not sure the 9Ks. I think because the top 4 teams are so good or such separators that they're going to be clicked at a way above rate. I think the 9Ks, if you want to get unique and spend a lot of salary, this is where you have to live.
Okay, so...
Because you didn't bet any of the 9Ks, right?
No, but I wanted to bet. Like, I'm circling the drains on Hoagie and McNeely and Taylor and Hadwin.
Yep.
And even
I don't
Strong...
think they get clicked. I like the Sep Garnett team. Garnett's been good.
And so is Sep. And Sep, like, I know that you mentioned PGA National. Maybe that's why Keith Mitchell's been so good here over the years. Like, that was the other team that I was kind of been like, I can see, like, Mitchell's come top 6 2 of the past 3 years. I think every single time with a different partner, he just seems to excel here. And if we're talking about tee to green or just simply ball striking, those 2 guys over the past 2 months have been really good.
Yeah, Keith has been like vintage, like Scheffler from an iron standpoint. You know, like I agree. And what I wish he would have been back with, I loved the Sungjae team that they had last year. I wish they would have came back, especially after Sungjae showed some life last week for the first time in a while. Yeah, I mean that's the way in my head. Like you're right. It's not typical PGA National or typical like Pete Dye. Like precision is everything. Like I don't think you can just rip the driver, but there's definitely danger. Right in that playoff hole, didn't it was a Louis or Charles that just sent it in the water to lose to Smith that year.
Yeah, Louis sent it off. They lost to Smith and Leishman.
Yeah.
Also, another good way to do this, I noticed from that year, I think 5 of the top 6 on the leaderboard all went to Live, including Peter Uihlein, who was in 3rd place that year. So if you can project out who you think is going to Live, then maybe that'll be a little bit easier to go through. But it's funny that everyone's going to gravitate towards Cantlay and Xander. I have a feeling that Rory and Lowry might come in under-owned. Like, I'm speaking from personal experience. As someone who bets and plays Shane Lowry every week, I just can't anymore.
And Rory is like habitually like under-owned, overclicked, not there. Like last week, he seemed like a terrible course fit, seemed like something that wouldn't make sense. So I get it, but like he just, I like getting above the field in that standpoint for sure. I think why would they play it if they don't? I mean, Rory needs something. Rory definitely needs like a win badly, and this would be a fun one to pick up for him.
And yeah, I think that you're right, that it does seem like maybe, and as you mentioned before, it's not like these guys are planning out like, well, I need to tee off first today so I can take advantage of holes 8, 12, and 16. Well, you get the preference on these. Like they're just probably going out drinking or gambling in New Orleans the night before and showing up to the course.
Yes, it's kind of why, Tommy Tables, Hoagie might play even better here. It's a perfect environment, and he needs to get some winnings back after the way Sunday finished.
Oh, yeah, I mean, he owes me some winnings from Sunday as well with the way that finished with the quintuple bogey. He has to win either next week or at Colonial. Like, those are the two I have circled where Tom Hoge, if he's going to win this season, it's going to be at one of those two places.
Yeah. So as we're talking through it, I think you can make like realistic arguments on like these teams that are not that bad of plays, but I mean, I can go, let me pull this up as we talk, like looking into the 9Ks, where did ownership shake out last year overall? Because I'd imagine those 10K teams were super strong last year too. So if I went into the 9Ks, what we see last year is so Siwoo and Tom Kim were the best performers last year. The highest owned team was Horschel and Burns, and that was at 22%. Outside of that, no one in the 20s. Ryan Lipsky were low owned. Hostler and Wyndham were low owned relative to an 80-person field. Like,
And they were
I
good.
think the 9Ks is where we differentiate.
All right, so let's do that. Let's take out Xander and Cantlay as a team and play Garnett and Straka, Hoge and McNeely, and Taylor and Hadwin instead.
Yeah, like that feels. I mean, all these lineups were like not the lineups that won were not like terrible lineups at all. They weren't off the walls. They weren't anything crazy. Like one or two each year maybe snuck in. But yes, I mean, getting to that point, I think we can play good teams and still come in unique.
So I guess, I mean, I did bet Taylor Moore to win with Matt Neesmith. Matt Neesmith would be the worst player who's ever won this tournament if that does happen. Actually, yes, Jonas Blixt won with Cam Smith.
He's teeing up on the DP World Tour these days. You know, Blix is I think he's 1,000 to 1 this week on the DP World Tour.
Good for him. So that leaves us 7,500 if we just keep everything the same. So we go Garnett, Straka, Hoge, McNeely, Taylor, and Hadwin with Smalley and Schmidt and Moore and Neesmith. And it leaves us $7,500 to play with. We could play last year's winners. We could play Kuchar and Stricker.
I think I would take Kuchar and Stricker in the head-to-head versus Piercy and Harry Hall after, especially what you said, you know, with Piercy's putting. Lauer and I think Lauer now. There was some conversation on your Monday show about the Woos. Dylan Woo is playing with Justin Lauer. Brandon Woo is playing with Jack Nicklaus. So
now I'm doing what Jeff's now in my head about all this stuff.
Yes. But I think Lauer's been pretty decent in like these birdie fest type of events overall. He's been on leaderboards, you know, like he led the API like into late Friday. So I think that would be my click there.
That, or I was even thinking about Chandler Phillips and Bridgman.
I wrote them up. Bridgman's been good. I think Bridgman's a good player.
So
and Phillips can win. Like Phillips is more boomer bust. Last year Bridgman he had 14 top 20s in like 24 starts at the Corn Ferry. I think Bridgman is a decent player that's just blooming a little late.
He's had a top 30 in 5 or 4 of his past 5 starts or 6 starts. Like, that's not bad.
Yeah.
And he held
they're not going to get clicked.
No, and he's now in the Brian Stewart, Chris Stroud zone that I can't tell the difference between Joe Highsmith or Max Gracerman, or like there's like 5 guys who are all exactly the same guy. Chandler Phillips is weirdly one of those guys too. So yeah, maybe for this lineup that we're going through right now, we can throw him in and that team. Just listen, they might not be as good as Dylan Woo and Justin Lauer, but I don't think there's that big of a difference.
No. And that's why it's like hard to make stands because I really don't think there is that much difference on a lot of guys. Like there's the separators up top, or if you want to get unique and fade. I mean, that's the only hard part if you don't go into the 10Ks. So if you, let's see, out of the last 3 years, somebody in the 10Ks, 3 of the top 10 teams fantasy point wise were in the 10Ks last year. 2 of the top 10 teams in 2022 were out of the 10Ks last year. So like the top teams do produce. It just might be impossible to roster all of them together, right? Like that is the situation we run in, and you're going to get a 5 of 6.
Do you like Thigala and Zal or Morikawa and Kitayama better?
Morikawa and Kitayama.
And if Zalatoris and Thigala win this thing and they burn their win at this event when no one is going to bet them, is going to be very tilting.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was a good bet by you last week on Sahith. He played awesome. I didn't expect that because I was on the Masters. I loved him at Augusta, and then that was frustrating.
I just ended up running it back with him. Yeah, Played the 6 par 5s over the weekend, even par.
Lost by 3, right? Come on.
Just birdie 4 of the 6, and you're at least in a playoff.
Yep.
It's crazy. And most people were birdieing all of them, except for my guys, my stupid guys. Hoke couldn't make a birdie on them either.
Nope.
So you can go Morikawa Kitayama in place of Hoagie and McNeely, and then you can drop down that Highsmith and Chandler Phillips team to the Cooties. And now all of a sudden we do have the $10,000 team. So it would be Morikawa, Nick Taylor, Garnett, 10, 9, 2, 9, with Taylor Moore, Alex Smalley, and the Cooties.
Yeah, and I think that's still different enough. Like, I mean, dupes, like last week, the dupe rate was like 18% of the field was duplicated in like the big contests. When I looked here, like the dupe rate, like last year, only 7% of teams, less than 7% of teams were duped. So like, there's still people that are clicking randoms or treating it differently. And that is with me, like, making the players one team. It's not if you clicked X and I clicked can't lay, we don't have the same team. Like I made sure to run through that. So I don't think you have to get insane, and that team is right on point.
So basically, as it pertains to strategy, I don't want to sit here building the same lineup all day long with you because I know like the guys that I want to play. So when I start sprinkling in guys on Fantasy National, so I'll probably just, honestly, if I'm going to play like 50 teams this week, I'll probably highlight most of the top teams based on what you said and just build different variations of them and then try to pick the Cooties, maybe 1 or 2 other 6K teams I like, or 6K / low 7K teams, and then even take those guys out of the pool at the same time and then rerun lineups. So build like 25 one way and 25 another way without, maybe I'll take Xander out of those ones as well. So build from like Rory to Schmidt and make sure all my 6 teams come from inside of there. And I'll just based on what the way that you said that it's played out. Now, every year is going to be different. It's not like 3 years is the end all be all of the sample size, but we're now starting to get some data points on it. And I do think that trying to beat these sort of weeks is doing those sorts of things.
Right. Like last year, it would have been like if you somehow landed on Brandon Matthews and Sean O'Hare, like that could have been the way you won the contest at 1%. They weren't needed. The year before was, year before was Dylan Wu and Justin Lauer at $6,300 under 1%. Like if I took 2 stabs at those teams, and I'm going to sprinkle if I'm, playing 150 and kind of the bigger ones, like the ones that stood out to me in the low end, like Charlie Hoffman isn't playing like a $6,200 golfer, it feels like, right? 2 top 5s for him. He's playing with Nick Watney, who hasn't done anything in a long time, except these 2 rip up this event every single year. If you look at the history, like their history is better than almost anybody. I mean, Hoffman, 19th, miscut 11th, 9th, 31st, 5th, and they played together every year. In those, and Watney basically hasn't done anything in that same time period. They stood out as 1, and then really off the board, I mean, it's going to be less than 1%. But Harry Higgs is showing a little bit of life on the Korn Ferry Tour. He made the cut last weekend in Corrales. He was, I think, like inside the top 20 going into the final round. And Trace Crow is somebody who's gotten, I don't know, like maybe a little like Bridgman type of treatment where he was really good as an amateur, had it around a little bit on the Korn Ferry Tour. PGA Tour hasn't been great to him. Last week was the best event he had, but there's two things that stood out. The best Higgs performance. Now, I'm not saying this is a corollary by any means, but he had a Pete Dye major result of T4 at Kiowa. So like Higgs has some Pete Dye in him. And then the course I thought that isn't played on the PGA Tour that has some corollary, and 2 guys in this field did really good at it. The Q School event this past year was played at the like Dye course in Jacksonville, which is another Pete Dye one. And Higgs's partner, Trace Crow, was one of the qualifiers there. So Endicott was the other one who won.
I thought you were going to give me Endicott Barnes. Barnes is a guy who he hit me in each way in Puerto Rico like a month ago. I was like, it's coming. Yeah. And I think he's missed every cut since.
He has. That's what scared me there. But Endicott won that event. That one was lots of water in play, a Pete Dye design where like you couldn't score a ton, but like it reminded me of PGA National too.
Okay. I did want to talk to you about the weather. before we get out of here, and just how that's been affecting so much so far this season. So we can take a look at the weather. I'm using the Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base, New Orleans, to figure this out for this week. So just to kind of go down a little bit there, I can make it fit my screen a little bit better. It's always fun producing this at home when Paul's got the day off. But if we take a look, like it looks like there's wind on Friday a little bit, and like from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., but not so much like that it would worry you. It doesn't look like there's any rain in the forecast. But I just think as more of an overview that it does feel, and maybe I'm misremembering this because it's recency bias, that weather has played more of an impact this year on a weekly basis than we've ever seen before.
Absolutely. And it's something that I don't think I realized the impact that a perfectionist who makes projections takes that into play. And, Rufus and Tom Peabody are the ones behind it at ETR, and the Masters was awful for them with the delays, with the changing of when it would play out. And they were running like 60% of the simulations are happening during this type of delay and 20% are here. And it mattered, right? Like, I think it evened out a little bit more after 2 days, but there were certain guys that got caught in spots that were terrible, right? The Valero was a huge event the week before. It was a 2-stroke advantage in that style. I think we also, as an industry, are such a bubble that we believe everybody is looking into these things. And, we need to get on the opposite side of the wave split because 90% of the field is going to play these guys. And it ends up being like 7% of the field, like wave stacks in the big contest. The higher dollar you play, the more it factors in. And maybe there are times and places when, I think you brought this up in weather situations, right? Dink won a British Open being on the opposite side. Like when there's like that type in play, it can happen. But I think you as a individual playing your lineup should factor it in, and you're going to be giving yourself more of a edge on the overall competition because of it.
Yeah, and like it's funny because I've won 4 GPPs, 1 in Showdown, so let's say 3 main slate contests so far this year, and 2 of them were from the opposite weather stack because I've just been stacking both sides every single week. Not because I believe that there's going to be some sort of huge weather advantage, because Tambo and I kind of talk this through every single week. It differentiates my lineup so much that most people don't have, like, you might land on a lot of the same guys if you're all playing the same wave stacks. But generally the guys that everyone gets wrong are like the quote-unquote sleeper guys this week. So like when the cooties don't play well this week, it's going to affect a lot of us. But if you were going to stack like the other way, it's at that mid-tier. So but we know that Smalley and Schmidt are going to be popular this week. We know that Moore and Neesmith are going to be popular this week. But if you were just to blindly wave stack this week, well, half your lineups couldn't have those guys in them to blow you up. And generally speaking, to win tournaments, the guys that you actually need to have are the pivot off the $7,700 chalk guy. It's the $7,600 guy that no one owns.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at it. Like just having that in your repertoire every week, I think, yes, like forces you into building unique construction when no one else is really doing it that way. Like on extreme examples, it is played out like on a routine week, you can win from both sides of that, right? Like it doesn't matter. But on the extreme examples, like I think, and kind of wrote about earlier in the year of that Players Championship that Cam Smith won was a year, right? That was the opposite side of the wave because of the thunderstorms, where it was like a 3-stroke advantage to the wrong wave that nobody played it. Like you set yourself up for that on those weeks too.
You do. Like I won Pebble. I mean, look, it was only 3 rounds, but I mean, part of that is weather, but I went with the other course that day that everyone stacked like, oh, it's going to be, today's the day you want to play Pebble because it's less windy than day one. So I just went the opposite way, and that's how I ended up on Wyndham Clark. And if you didn't have Wyndham Clark, you couldn't have won.
100%. Yeah, I think it just forces you onto plays that the typical public isn't going to click. Agreed.
Yeah, so maybe I'll end up doing that this week because I think it's split 20-20 on each side of the draw. Or 40-40?
I would imagine it's, or 40-40, right?
40-40.
Yes. Still a typical week in that fashion. Yep.
Yeah, it's top 33 in ties make the cut. It's funny when you mentioned all those teams at the very top. My first inclination was to go to look for to make the cut parlay of just like all of the top end teams. The first place I looked at is not offering it, so I'll have to go see if other places are offering it to make the cut parlay.
Well, the Circa one paid out, or whichever one you hit when you were in Vegas, that paid out handsomely. So that was awesome.
That one was great. The Masters is generally the only place where I play those, though.
I'm trying to look. So I see some make the cut odds out there.
At DraftKings?
No, it looks like MGM in the States. What's Unibet overseas? Unibet is it's Unibet overseas. It's Rivers in the States.
Okay. So I could play it at Unibet here, is what you're saying?
I don't know if you can parlay, but those are the two books that have make the cut. It looks like those top teams, Kayla and Schauffele are minus 500, McIlroy, Lowry minus 400, Kitayama, Zalatoris, those two teams minus 333. Those four separate, but I mean that's better than like what are those guys paying on a make the cut on a typical week, right? Like they are minus 800, minus thousands. You know, like,
yeah, I don't know if they'd be that high, but that's about in line with what they would be. I'm just thinking that if 17 of the 18 of the top teams end up making the cut, like on average over the past few years, that try to pick out 7 of them and put them together, then you could even round robin it. I mean, that's almost better than playing a GPP this week.
Yeah, that's a good line of thinking because we haven't seen. I mean, even the year that there was a bunch of 10K teams, like that was a little bit more odd, but yeah, I mean. I think I was just shocked as I looked through the numbers that this is probably way more of a typical week of the way it plays out than a lot of people think, and we can capitalize on that, and that's probably an opportunity to do that.
All right, Skylar Hoke, thank you for still sticking around on the DP World Tour show, by the way, now that you got your big fancy gig at ETR.
I can't miss that. I love doing it, man. I love it.
Oh, and you're in Florida, right?
Yes. Yep.
That means you can play Underdog Champions, the new contest that they have available.
I did see that. I was looking into a little bit, and good recommendation too. I was fearful when they shut down Underdog Pick'em in Florida. I couldn't get in the drafts. So the Pat Mayo Open, the best ball drafts for the majors. Like I'm deep in the Underdog streets. I love it.
All right, yeah, code Mayo, Underdog Fantasy. Get yourself a deposit match of up to $100. And if you live in Florida right now, you can get a deposit matched up to 20%, up to $500, even if you already have an account. So they want you to reactivate. So they're throwing people in Florida a bone right now.
Perfect. I'm in. I love it.
So there you go. Code Mayo for all of that fun stuff to activate yourself in Florida for Champions right now. A new game presented by Underdog Fantasy in the state of Florida. You can follow Sky, Skyhook DFS. ETR is where you can check out his sleeper column and all of his content outside of the DP World Tour stuff, which he's doing Monday nights with Tom Jacobs on Mayo Media Network and on the Mix podcast feed for Mayo Media Network. For me, sub to the newsletter. I have all the final bets in it. I have to go mull over Hawaii and have to play Papashugo over in Japan. We'll see how that ends up going. I'll have all of the names listed in a very handy cheat sheet form with their odds next to it on Wednesday evening. So please go sub to that. It's completely free. I'll be back with Jeff and Cust Friday morning reacting to the NFL draft. You missed our NFL mock draft show with Thor and Ray. Recommend that you go do that. Check that out on Wednesday as well after you've watched this, okay? Thank you so much for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!